So my name is Dr. Stephanie Stobbe. I'm a professor in conflict resolution studies and Redekop School of Business from Canadian Mennonite University. I will be chairing this afternoon's session on documentary presentation. This session will begin with a short 12-minute film screening of I Have Nothing to Add, directed by Tanya Stefanenko, followed by a presentation from Maria Lotsmanova on her GULAG research in Russian archives. After that, we'll have some time for a Q&A. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our presenter, Maria Lotsmanova. Until recently, Maria has worked at Moscow's GULAG History Museum, the Museum of Soviet Repressions, where she headed the Documentation Center. The museum consulted with visitors on finding information in archives about people persecuted and convicted during the mass repression in the USSR. Her own research has focused on the family history of her repressed Mennonite ancestors. It became the plot for an animated documentary, I Have Nothing to Add. Her work was interrupted by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In August 2022, Maria moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to join her wife, who is a postdoc at the University of Pittsburgh. Let's begin with the film, followed by a presentation from Maria. Sure.
Спасибо. Телефончиком всегда включите. В здании ФСБ пользуются телефонами и фото-видео приборами нельзя.
Предки мои были немцы-меннониты, приверженцы одного из протестантских течений. Они отрицают насилие, не берут в руки оружие, и они очень традиционные, работящие. Прадед мой с семьей жил в Крыму, пока в 1931 году его не раскулачили и не отправили на спецпоселение в Архангельскую область.
Дамы и господа, наш самолет произвел посадку в аэропорту Талаги, города воинской славы, Архангельск.
Никто из моих родственников ничего не знает о том, как жила семья, о том, что произошло. Для меня это было удивительно, что такой огромный кусок жизни, в общем, нашей семьи, наших предков, он просто вычеркнут из памяти, его нет, никто об этом ничего не знает. Как будто этих людей и не было вовсе. Мой Яков 17-го ушел от нас, и мы не знаем, куда и где он находится. Мне так страшно, так как мы в их власти. Если бы я вам могла написать свободно от всего сердца, было бы гораздо легче, но кругом мы окружены. Ни одного слова, ни одной записки без коменданта. Первые протоколы допросов Янсен писал сам, и я, когда стала их читать, я как будто познакомилась с этим человеком, которого никогда не видела. Антисоветской агитацией я не занимался, а имел недовольствие к порядкам, а это считается все контрреволюция. Что касается выражения моего на собрании, нужно натопить сначала паровоз, а потом можно им поехать, я сказал в отношении лошадей, которых нужно сначала 10 дней кормить овсон, а потом требовать работу. Связь за границей, в частности с Германией, я поддерживал с 1925 года, то есть с момента выезда моей сестры из СССР в Германию с ее мужем. Я писал своей сестре, что в первое время много здесь умерло от недоедания, и что мы, как рабочие, не в состоянии прокормить на этом пайке без помощи других наших детей. Если бы какой-нибудь комендант предупредил меня о том, что нельзя об этом писать, я бы этого и не сделал бы. По обвинению я согрешил в этом, прошу мне то простить. Я в жизни больше не буду писать о трудностях, а буду их переживать до самой смерти и переносить во что бы то ни стало. Прадеда отправили в концлагерь в Сибирь. Через 4 года он вернулся.
Коммунистическая партия и советское правительство поставили перед работниками исправительных трудовых учреждений задачу перевоспитания преступников. На политических занятиях вопросы текущей политики сочетаются с увлекательными рассказами о значении строительства ГЭС в жизни нашего народа. В непринужденной беседе заключенные говорят и о себе, о своих мечтах.
В письмах из-за границы было написано, чтобы мы, как евангельские христиане, были готовы ко второму пришествию Иисуса Христа в облаках. И сказано, когда придет наш Господин, это сказано в духовном смысле, а не как многие думают, что ждут перемену времени от иностранцев. Это ни в коем случае понимать нельзя. В августе месяца 1937 года в 4 кварталах я рыл колодец, а Янсен работал на железнодорожной ветке. Он пришел ко мне покурить. Мы стали беседовать. На мой вопрос «Как живешь?» Янсен высказал: «Не жизнь, а мучение, не пот, а кровь течет из людей. Вспомни, придет время, здесь останутся одни штопки, которыми подбивают песок под шпалы. А людей здесь не будет, и это будет скоро». Я у него спросил, как это получится. Он сказал: «Увидишь, и тогда вспомянешь Янсена. Чего сейчас есть, этого не будет. Это перед концом коммунисты так измываются перед народом. Значит, советская власть слаба, когда боится людей, каждого и всюду начинает сажать в тюрьму». следствием вы изобличаетесь в том, что в контрреволюционных целях установили связь с фашистскими организациями Германии, сообщая туда сведения о СССР, получая за это денежные вознаграждения. Дайте показания. Виновным себя в этом не признаю. Вы от следствия скрываете правду, предлагая прекратить отпирательство и дать откровенные показания. Дополнить ничего не могу. Написано с моих слов правильно, мною прочитано. Янсен.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for watching the documentary, for being here. Thank you very much to organizers for having me here. I feel really lucky being here. And so I have to say that that documentary was produced in 2020, and it might have, so that was another period of my, the earlier period of my research, so there might be some inaccuracies. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, I'm really worried because this is the first time in Canada, and this is the first time I see so many Mennonites and Mennonite-related people, and especially showing this documentary to them, so I'm a bit worried. But this film, I have to say that it has been sent and participated in several festivals in Russia and had pretty good reception and life, but this is very important that this documentary to be shown here for me. And as Stephanie said, I used to work in Moscow at the GULAG History Museum, but what brought me here was my personal research, and I'm not a historian, I'm not in academia. I was just very much at some point I became really interested in the history of this family, the Janssen family, and so I started to dig in, and that brought me to the GULAG Museum. And so I'm a kind of a practitioner in archives in this particular field of archives, and so by getting this experience that allowed me to consult other people at the GULAG History Museum, what I was doing, I was basically telling them how to go to archives, how to get the investigational cases, how to request these things, how to get documents, and so on and so forth. And I was just kind of inspiring them by my own experience. And yeah, but before I talk just a little bit about about the documents I found, I just wanted to tell you this short story about the connection I actually had before with Winnipeg before coming here. So the photograph you saw in the video, in the movie, I got it from the Mennonite Heritage Archive. But so in our family archive, we had this photograph, but you can see it lower, so it's like a photograph of a photograph, like this kind of a copy. And when I started to dig in, I found this book, The House of Heinrich, compiled and edited by Anna Ernst, who turned out to be my distant relative. And I'm hoping to meet her in a couple of days, finally, in person. I never thought I'm going to do that. So, yeah, and Anna presented me this book. She sent it to Russia, and so I got the hard copy. And so, because of her research, I could find out that one of the origin, I guess, of this photograph is kept in the Mennonite Heritage Archive, and I'm going to visit that one as well. So yeah, I've been in contact to Winnipeg for a couple of years already, and I've been in contact with Conrad, the archivist, and yeah, but I never thought I'm gonna make it to Canada, so thanks again for having me here. So, as you probably understood, like most of this documentary is based on the documents I found in archives, yeah, when I actually started doing this, I never thought that that there are so many personal, so to say, documents could be found in archives. So thanks to those documents, I could literally restore the life of these people, because most of their lives, they were like vanished from the memory, basically. So thanks to these documents, I could restore at least some bits of their biography. And it all started actually with this, with the investigation cases of my great-grandfather, Jakob Janssen. And as I said in the movie, he turned out that he was writing the interrogation protocols by himself, and so this is his handwriting. Yeah, and he wrote quite a lot, actually, like several pages, and it really expresses him as a person, like, and what he thinks. I do understand that this is interrogation protocol, right? So, I mean, you have to approach these documents correctly, but still, anyhow, out of this material, somehow you can compile one's personality, I guess, or at least some version of it, and it really excites me. Another interesting document, which was also in the movies, are the letters from my great-grandmother to her relatives, one in Germany and one to Crimea, one to Germany and one to Crimea. So those letters were intercepted by the OGPU, so they never were delivered to the relatives, and they were found in the investigation case as well. And since those were like evidences, they had to be translated to Russian, and I had the translation, so thanks to that I could actually understand what's written there, because I believe that this is not just German but Plattdeutsch, which is very difficult to translate. But yeah, those letters, those are like 100 years old, and this is like one of the most precious documents in my collection, I believe. And those would really describe, well, you saw part of it, you heard part of it, but those would really describe the situation my great-grandmother found herself, because her husband was taken and she was with 5 children, all under 18 years old at the special settlement already. So, yeah, I mean, I was really shocked when I found those, and I was, I guess, really lucky. Some other documents that were not used in these movies, but as I told, I was so charmed in a way with the great-grandfather and his family, so I kind of decided just to find as many documents as I could. And yeah, because he was basically repressed all times, so there are many of them. So these are profiles with the property descriptions of the Janssen family from the case of disenfranchised, so the Licheniets, so-called. So as I said, first their property was taken in the beginning of the 30s, so this is the description of the property. And well, thanks to these documents, you can also like see, like follow their life in the timeline. So for example, I can find here that they had a child who was born in 1928, and he appears in the photograph, but he won't be in the special settlement already. So I believe that he like, I couldn't find more traces, but I believe that he could die either infant or when they were departed, right? Another document I found that was also from the case of disenfranchised Licheniets. This is application by my great-grandmother, application to regional executive committee. So when she stayed on her own with 5 kids, she's asking to go back to Crimea, to go back to her home, and her parents lived there. And also one interesting thing I found, I underlined her signature in the right bottom corner. So I guess that, my guess is that she either, well, I guess that she couldn't write in Russian very well, so someone has written this for her, and because her handwriting is different, and you can see that. Another document, also an interesting one, profiles of special settlers, from special settlers cases. Those are not that well known, first of all, because they were filed later and not all the special settlers had them. And also they're kept in other group of archive, and it's really hard to reach them, but I managed to, because the rest of the family, after the great-grandfather was shot, so the rest of the family, they stayed as special settlers till the middle of 50s, and they were resettled several times, and also because of the documents I could track down all the way all the places they've been to. And so as you can see, these documents contain a lot of personal information. So this is another profile, and this is like autobiography. This is a profile of my grandmother, actually, who was born at the special settlements, so in 1931 when they were moved. So my great-grandmother was already pregnant with her when they were moved. Yeah, so basically, I mean, you guys are very much experts here, and I thought that, like, what else can I share? So something that I was very much doing while at the GULAG History Museum, I was kind of trying practically to find out where all these personal archival materials are kept at the moment. And here I just want to present these groups of them. Maybe this information would be relevant to you and maybe useful. And I do understand that nowadays it's just it's a huge trouble to get anything from Russian archives, especially abroad, but well, hopefully things change someday and we'll know where to look for these files. Because I have to say that personally, I mean, as a non-historian, but still, like, I was really shocked understanding how many of these personal files are kept in the archives and never have been approached by anyone. Like, because of my work, I had to deal with a lot of investigational cases, and like half of them have never been approached for the last like 20 or 30 years. I mean, and those has like photographs and, you know, personal stuff and all these histories. And investigation cases, those are judicial or extrajudicial, introduced by Troika and etc. Conviction, those are kept in FSB archives, so Federal Security Services, and also in some regions in state archives, and those are easier to approach, actually. It happens so that, we still have some time, okay, yeah, just a little bit. So, it happens so that some of the cases were transferred, in some regions of Russia, some cases were transferred to state archives, and those are actually easier to approach, and sometimes you don't have to prove you're related to get copies. There are also prisoner cases, so when someone was convicted, but not to death penalty, but sent to the camp, to the labor camp, and if the person died there, or he was disabled, or he was a foreigner, so he had foreign citizenship. So those prisoner cases, they're still there, they're still kept. It's really hard to get them. You have to prove you're related, and you have to collect all the documents and have them sealed and everything, but they're still there, and they're kept in either MVD, which is Minister of Internal Affairs, or SIN, which is a federal penitentiary system. Thank you. Also, special settler cases, those I said already that those were files starting from 1986. Those all are kept in a Ministry of Internal Affairs. And there are also these cases of Lisheniets, those people who were deprived of their rights, but who tried to restore them. So there are like personal cases as well, and those are kept in state archives and can be reached as well. So, well, with ending my presentation, when I was at the museum of the GULAG History Museum, so we compiled the book with 19 stories of this kind of same research when people were investigating the history of their ancestors, and we were helping them. So we collected those stories, and my story is also in this collection book. So it was published last year. It is called Correctly Recorded in My Own Words. It is now only in Russian, but you can download it freely using this QR code, or you can just email me and I'll send you the link. So if you're interested in like reading more about my story and you know Russian, so you're welcome. And I also tried to publish all the documents I found. I tried to put them all there. So because I felt really, it felt really important to keep this direct speech of my ancestors I found. And also the movie that you saw is also available on YouTube online, so you can watch it again and you can show it to someone else and forward it. So please do so, and here are my contacts. And I very welcome if you need any help with questions about Russian archives, and I'm there to help and to consult if you have any questions about that or questions about movie, or we can go to the dinner earlier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing your film as well as your own story and history, and seeing the documentary and all the archival materials and video footage as well as photos. I think they are really powerful in terms of telling your story and other people's story, and so I was really happy to be able to see that and to see that research can be disseminated in different ways. So thank you so much for that. Now we have some time for a Q&A. So if you have some questions for Maria, raise your hand, and if you can say your name and ask your question, that would be great. So I have a gentleman here at the front. I don't know, do we have
Stephanie,
a mic now?
you turn me on. Stephanie, we're just going to get one from the Zoom room as well that we've got,
Okay.
and then I'll bring it around.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll start here,
Yeah, okay.
and then get one from Zoom?
Just from Zoom right away,
Okay.
since I'm
Oh,
back here.
Zoom
Yeah,
first?
that's
Okay, great.
So yeah, the question, thanks so much, Maria, for the presentation as well. From Zoom is a bit about location, just noting that one of the last scenes shows a building and a well, and they were wondering where those are located, those images are coming from.
Okay, so there was a photo of the well,
Yeah.
and what was the question?
Where that was located,
Where
that was
that
what they wanted to
located
know.
in the film?
Yeah, so the contemporary photographs, those are mine. So I went to the places where the special settlements were. I know that like those, I mean, nothing exists there anymore, basically because those special settlements, they were meant to be like to last for like 5-6 years, and then people were relocated to other areas. But I just felt like I really wanted to go there and just to see, you know, the nature and the climate and everything. So those are Arkhangelsk region and Plisetsky district in particular. Those were the places where my ancestors lived for a while. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was a gentleman here. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Frank Dick, although I was born of Jacob Clausen, and that's a story in itself. The video that you saw doesn't tell half the story. The city of Arkhangelsk was 100,000 people. Can you imagine working in the slave labor camp? And if you want more details on that, I highly recommend reading the book Flight. It's in the back there. It's 2 inches thick, but it tells some real horror stories. And the other reason I mention this is my mother and my older sister were sent up there right after the Second World War. And then in 1957, they were allowed to go, and they went to the Tokmak area near Chinese border. And in 87, my wife and I had a chance to see both my mom and my dad. He lived in Kiev. So, once in a lifetime.
Yeah, thank you so much, and for mentioning the book. There are just so many stories out there, and it would be great to have a collection, right, of those different stories. There's a woman back there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Christina Amazonas. Thank you for your presentation. I was very intrigued by the letters that you were able to access that were written and were never sent out of the Soviet Union. Was that something you were able to retrieve yourself physically, or were you only able to take the pictures?
No, I took them as I'm related directly, and I have all the documents, and according to the law that treats these archival documents, I'm in my power to collect this as a personal item. So those are in my own archive right now.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Esther Eptison. Maria, you and I spoke earlier, and I knew of your connection to my aunt, Anna Ep-Ens, which makes us distant relatives. I want to commend you on the work you have done. And I just wonder, like, what has the impact of doing this research? What's the impact been on you personally? What has it meant for you to learn this story of your great-grandfather?
Well, actually, this story had a huge impact on my life. Basically, it changed it like 100%, because I never thought finding myself at the museum. I never thought, working there. So the museum, the GULAG History Museum, was the great experience, and I met so many people because of this museum. I met my wife, my future wife there, and I've never been. I would never have been here, I guess, because of this story. So, also, like, when I started doing this research and when I realized these documents have never been, treated anyhow, and if I don't, I had the feeling that if I don't do it, those documents might be just gone. So I really had this strong urge to conduct this research, and I even rehabilitated some of my ancestors, because with the special settlers cases, those cases, they haven't been, the government didn't conduct this rehabilitation automatically, so these cases are just there, and to access them, first you have to rehabilitate these people. So I was shocked when I had to rehabilitate people like 70, 80 years later. So, I think this is a very powerful approach to history of the country, and you actually understand what you're dealing with, and yeah.
Thank you. I have
Huge
a
one.
question from upstairs, and then we'll come down.
So these documents were in Moscow, I take it? Or in Dnipro?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Where were the documents and the interrogations held? Were they in Moscow? I guess that's where you did your research.
The documents I found, where those would be.
Yes, yeah. So where did you
So
find the documents?
the investigational cases of my great-grandfather, those are kept in FSB and Arkhangelsk. I went there several times. Some of the cases would be in Crimea and Simferopol State Archive, and also MVD of Simferopol City. Some cases I was collecting around the whole Russia, like from Perm, from Kurgan, and all over the place, because as I said, the special settlers, they would go all over the place. They would be sent all over the place.
So people that were interrogated in various cities, the documents would find their way to wherever these centers are?
So it depends on a type of the document. Investigational cases, they are kept in most cases they're kept in regions where a person was arrested. With the cases about deportation and other administrative repressions, those should be looked for in either in place from where a person was exiled, or in the region where he ended up in. So there is a lot of mess in archives, and also in Russian archives, and also that's why we were doing our job in the GULAG History Museum. Thank you.
Then we have a question there, and then here.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm curious about your process of showing this information about your family through the visual medium of the video. I'm curious about how you chose an animator to work with, and what were your instincts in how to continue to tell the story of your ancestors visually alongside the documents that you have.
Yeah, about the visual side, I can't say much actually, because so the film was directed by Tanya Stefanenko. So she's a documentary director, and she was just very much impressed with the story, and she asked me for material. So basically, I was doing the research, and I just provided as many documents as I could, and we would talk a lot about that, but I wasn't interfering into the visual concept. And luckily, the film appeared the way I felt. So it reflects me very much, and I was surprised that she managed to do it so precisely, reflecting my own thoughts and feelings. Thank you.
We have here and here. Oh, one more? Okay, we have time for one more question. So, yeah. Do you want a mic? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really resonated with the photographs from the different GULAG situations that were on in your movie. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the book called GULAG by Anne Applebaum. It was written in 2003 and it won a Pulitzer Prize. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the Soviet concentration camp system and the Soviet persecution of their own people, I would highly recommend that you read this book if you haven't already. Thanks again for your presentation.
Yeah, I would also say that if you want to know more about these special settlements, Viola Lynn wrote a very, very good book about that, and happily it was translated to Russian, so I could also read it. And yeah, this is a very good research about this type of repression. And yeah, and I also forgot to mention, so Ekaterina Harder, my great-grandmother who appeared in this photograph, so she was the daughter of Justine and Abraham Harder, Naomi Fast was telling about.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all the questions and your interest in this. Thank you, Maria, for sharing your story. And it's only 5 minutes after, so we're good.